Hello there and welcome back to Laurence Plays Foundry, where I'm going having a bit of a look through the game and talking about some of my early thoughts with how the game plays, how it feels and so on. And the thing I'm going to look at first today is going to be terraforming. So with a 3D game like this, the landscape has a certain amount of shape, and so you might want to change that shape a little bit to make your machinery fit in a little better. So you might want a big, wide, flat area like this for a load of assembly machines, or you might need to run a belt or a pipe through a mountain or underground a little bit to get to where you want it to go. And initially at the start of the game, you're given this little mining drill, which allows you to dig holes like this. And actually, it's worth mentioning I've done a couple of upgrades on through research, which mean it runs a lot faster than it did originally. And so if I want to make a tunnel to go through it, then I can do so like this, and it's not too bad for small amounts of digging, but it's also not exactly quick. It's also quite short range, so you can't just stand there and dig a chunk out without having to move. You do need to continually get closer and closer. A bit later on in the game, you unlock the mining laser, which is a similar idea, but it's a bit faster and can zap things from further away. So this makes things a lot easier, especially when you're sort of floating over the landscape on your jetpack and want to remove sort of blocks from a little bit further away. So it's a massive improvement and was very welcome when I unlocked it. However, it is still a bit slow and a little bit manual. In a recent upgrade, they added in some exciting new features which make things much better. The first of these is being able to choose different sizes for your mining laser to cut out in. So that was my 1x1. Now if I go over to a 2x2, I can take out 4 blocks at a time like that, or like that. I can go all the way up to 4x4, which takes out 16 at a time in a 4x4 square. And this is fantastic. You can use this to quickly open up a fairly large area. Now you'll notice that it's a little bit slower than taking out a single block. And I think the mining laser is the same speed per block, whether you're doing 1 at a time or 16 at a time. So it takes 16 times as long to dig out a big chunk like this. Maybe slightly less, I'm not sure. If you dig deep enough and far enough, you will eventually find stone, which is functionally very similar to the soil or the sand that you discover in other places, but takes quite a lot longer to dig through. So let's go down here a little bit, see if we can find some. Here we go. Here's some stone. You can tell because it's grey, and also because when I zap it, it takes a lot longer to dig through it. So, that's fair. It's a different type of terrain. It's harder to cut through. Fine. And even if you go even further down, when you get down all the way down to the lava levels, you discover a sort of bedrock stuff, which you literally just can't dig through because your technology is not adequate to the task. And this isn't bad. It's a big improvement over using it in 1x1 mode, but it's still a little bit slow. Fortunately, they introduced another new toy as well, and that's this tool, the excavation drone controller. And with this, you can choose whether you want to do single blocks, 2D shapes or 3D shapes. 3D shapes is by far the most fun, and to do that you can then define an area. So you click in the bottom corner of the area and drag it out a 2D area in a two-dimensional rectangle like that. Then you release, and you can then turn it into a 3D area like that. And if I turn on my personal drones, then these little robot guys will fly out from my inventory and go out and demolish the bit of terrain that I'm working on. And so this is great because it's much more hands-off. Once you've defined the shape, you can just sort of stand near it and your drones will fly out. Now if you're helpful, you can stay as close to the areas they're trying to mine out as possible, and then it'll speed things up a bit because the drones don't have to fly as far. And you can see this is going much faster than if I stand over here. But you can also just stand vaguely nearby and let them get on with it while you're building something else somewhere else. And so it's very hands-off, which is quite nice. They do only have a limited range though. There is only a certain distance that they will fly in order to do the digging. Fortunately, these deconstruction planners, for want of a better word, will also get the attention of your construction ships if you've got any. And these are something that come in probably about the mid-game, I would say. And they will fly out, and they have their own construction drones on board as well. And when they find an area that needs some mining doing, they'll fly over, they'll pour out a steady stream of these little drones that then go down to the area that you've marked and will do the digging for you. So they're going in, and they're now taking out all the bits of soil from down here, flying it up and taking it back to the mining ship. And with this, you can mark out as big an area as you want for mining, and then clear off and do something else on the other side of the factory. Come back a couple of hours later, and it'll probably all be gone. And that's fantastically useful because it means you're not doing the whole thing yourself. You don't even have to wait on site for it to happen. You can just mark an area for demolition, and your cunning robots will come out and destroy it all for you. And this is brilliant. This has been so useful, especially over here on this side of the factory, where as my factory expanded outwards, well, there was a mountain in the way. And I say was because, well, you'll see that there's a certain amount of that mountain missing now, and that's because I've been coming over and doing things like this, where I'll come in and go, well, actually, I don't want this mountain to be here. So I'll select from there all the way over to, well, as big as it'll let me, which is about that far out, and then it's about 30 to 32 in each direction, I think. If you managed to get the absolute maximum. There's a 33 in there. I don't know. It's quite a lot anyway. So I can select an area like that and then go up as high as it'll let me, like so, and select that area for in theory, I can then select that area for demolition. I did something wrong here. I'm not quite sure what. It's not worked quite as I intended. So let's try it again. So draw out an area like that. Build it out to about 30. And then drag it up to also to a height of about 30. I think if you try and drag outside the space where it's capable of doing, then it gets confused and doesn't work properly. So I might need to make my heights. Let's go for 37, like that. And there we go. Now that's marked that entire area for deconstruction. So that's going to take out a huge chunk of the factory, of the mountain. I can then do an additional one from here like this, and select another block that's about 30 something by 30 something. And then by whatever's required to get to cut off the top of the mountain, which is about that high. And there you can see this entire area has now been marked in blue. And one of my construction ships, oh, and here comes a second construction ship as well. So they're now going to demolish this. It's not a quick process. The mining drones do take a while to demolish everything, as you can see. Each one, as it flies down, will take out one piece of soil. But with two ships over here and a bit of patience and going off and just doing something else for a while, it's not too bad. It means you can set something to be demolished and then go off and do a job elsewhere and be fairly confident that it'll be destroyed by the time you get back. Those construction ships then fly back over to your construction ship port, which I've got a couple of those down here. So you can see their landing bays that they can drop down into, and then you can unload all of that soil that you've been digging up, and you have to unload it because otherwise the landing area will fill up, and you can dump it into a pod like this. So far, I'm just stockpiling basically all of it inside this container here. So I've got enormous quantities. I've got 67,000 dirt and 30,000 stone in here, plus a load of other stuff as well. And that's taking up a bit of space. But also in a recent update, they massively increased the amount of stuff you can fit in one stack of soils because people are getting a bit fed up of having to purge their inventory every couple of minutes when they were doing manual mining. And so they've expanded the available space here. And you're now supposed to be able to recycle all of that dirt. And apparently I'm running on a slightly older version of Foundry, according to somebody in chat on the stream last time, because this machine over here will currently only demolish as soil types go tundra dirt. It won't do any of the others, but it will recycle all the seeds and various other types of concrete and stuff into component materials. But apparently if I'd updated slightly later, then I'd have got a slightly newer version, which would allow it to destroy lots and lots of different types of dirt, and then I wouldn't have to be quite as fussy with what my filter inserter over here is outputting, and we'd be able to just dump everything into this recyclometron, and that then turns it all into useful ores, which you can see down here. We've got almost 100 pieces of useful ore that have been generated from the soil that has been recycled so far. There's about a 1% chance or something of it being 5% chance of it being turned into any one of these things. So I can then send this off back into my processing systems and try and find some way of piping it from this machine off to the various different mines and processing areas around the factory to deal with the various resources. So there's going to be a little bit of spaghetti required for that, but never mind. That's always fun, and I don't mind a bit of spaghetti in my factory. It's kind of how we roll around here. And so I think that ability to destroy massive chunks of your planet in one go without having to sit there chipping away at it with the mining drill has pretty much saved the game for me. I was getting to a point where I was getting quite frustrated with digging through places manually. But there is one other way of dealing with mountainous terrain that you don't like that is even more fun, and I haven't spoken about yet, and that is the orbital laser. So you have your space station up there in space that manages all of your interstellar trading, fantastic, but also you can build up an orbital laser on it. And that is just a point and click way of removing territory. So the top of this mountain over here, if I decide I don't like that mountain, I can start just blowing it up, and this is amazing. It's really effective. It does huge amounts of damage to the mountain, and chisels you some nice big holes through it. So I discovered this, and suddenly I didn't mind mining out chunks of terrain quite so much. Unlike the other methods we've seen, this does actually destroy the rock you're shooting, which makes a kind of sense, I have to admit. So you don't get it back as a resource you can then use for building, and it overheats fairly quickly, as is shown by that yellow bar on it. But compared to digging it out by hand, this is absolutely amazing. There is, however, one rather large downside to this system. Actually, no, take that back. There are two downsides to the system. One is that it's not very controlled, and you can end up knocking rather big holes in the ground like this, which, to be fair, is not the end of the world, because it's fairly easy to then just come back and fill them in with the paint tools like this, and this, But there we go. Now you'd never know there was a hole in the ground there. There is still a big hole underneath, and if we had proper physics, then things would sink down into it. But we don't, so we don't. So that's absolutely fine. But the big problem with it is if you're not careful enough, which I'm usually not, because I tend to get a bit carried away, the laser is more than capable of destroying your buildings by mistake. So I've been trying to dig a decent distance away from the areas that where I'm trying to build stuff. But if I fire it in over here, you can see I've just accidentally wrecked a load of my pipe work over here, and it's created all of this shrapnel on the ground, which I will then need to tidy up. Pipes aren't too bad because at least they're cheap and relatively easy and therefore easy to replace. But again, if you're not careful, you can accidentally blow up large chunks of important factory parts like that. And that would lead to now a lot of tidy up because there's all of this shrapnel and junk on the floor, and also I've blasted a hole in the floor again, which I need to fill in, and most importantly, I would now need to rebuild this part of my factory. Now, this is my between streams game. I'm not going to save this, so that doesn't actually matter. But I've done that a few times in game before we had the proper drone mining system set up and running. And it's quite upsetting when you accidentally blow up a chunk of your factory and then have to go in and rebuild it, especially if you don't have the machinery to hand. It is satisfying shooting trees, though. In fact, it's satisfying shooting everything. It's just the trees collapse particularly nicely. Another essential feature in any factory game is a copy-paste system, and of the games I've played, there have been various levels of implementation, shall we say, to this. The gold star, of course, goes to Factorio because it always does, with a system that allows you to copy any chunk of your factory and paste it in somewhere else, including rotating it, flipping it, etc, etc, even to the point of being able to save blueprints and the whole parameterized systems. That is, of course, the gold standard. Dyson Sphere program was pretty good. As far as I remember, it allowed you to select chunks of your factory and copy and paste them, but there were some funny shenanigans that went on because you were building on a sphere, so your grid wasn't quite a strict grid, so you had to be a little bit careful about where on the world you were doing your copy pasting. Satisfactory system was unfortunately not satisfactory. There is no copy and paste functionality in the game at all, so you can't copy an existing thing you have built and paste it in somewhere else. There is the blueprinting system, which is a start, but that's a bit weird because you have to build specifically with making a blueprint in mind rather than copying something you've already built, which is a little bit annoying, but not the end of the world. But then also, the area you can make inside the blueprint editor is far too small to actually be useful because Satisfactory has those lovely big buildings that we've talked about in the past. And also, when you drop down two blueprints next to each other, they don't link together. Belts won't join, rails won't join, power systems won't join. And so that's made using the blueprint systems almost not worth it. There were a few small modules where I did, like little smeltery areas or little construction areas. I did a few of those and then went in and linked them together with belts afterwards. So it's not completely useless. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't good enough. Foundry, as standard, does not have a copy-paste system. However, there is a mod available for it, and I've heard rumours that the author who made the mod for the copy-paste system has now been hired by the developers of Foundry, so they've clearly got their heads in the right place. They know that a copy-paste is essential, and the fact that they've hired the guy who made the system shows that they are very interested in adding it in. So I'm once again, early access. I'm throwing them a lot of slack on this one. I think they deserve it. It looks like they are going to be adding copy paste in fairly soon, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So, as it is with the mod, because I've installed the mod, because you can't play one of these games without a copy paste system, you can select an area like this. So I can select this area that's got a load of batteries and a load of solar panels in it, and once again, much like the deconstruction thing, I can click and drag to select an area, and I say I want it to go out to here because that's the whole thing. Then I release, and then I say I want it to be, the height doesn't really matter in this particular case. We'll go up that far because why not? So I can click again, and that has set the area that I want to copy. Now with this, I can then drag the edges out. If I've not got it right, it's quite clever. It allows me to then drag the edges out and tweak the area that I'm copying and pasting. I can do it up and down as well. If you hold down Alt, you can also drag and drag the opposite side of it, which is great for the underside of a blueprint. So if I hold down Alt and drag here, you can see the bottom is going up, and if I then put it back down again like that, back to where I want it, or I can do the same on the side as well. And then I can right click and hold, and then lots of options appear. So we can open the full-on control panel, which I'll show you in a moment. We've also got the confirm copy, which says yes, this is the thing I want to copy, and you can then go and place your paste thing wherever you want. You do copy in place, which keeps the highlight you've got set and is fantastic for tiling things. You can say oops, that was wrong, clear it, I want to start again. And you've got the resize things as well, tools as well, which presumably is what I was just playing with, but maybe there's a different, yeah, I don't know how that differs to what I already had selected. So if I do a confirm copy in place because I want to tile this, I can then go to the side of it and I can drag from here, and you'll see that as I drag across, it doubles the area selected and then triples it. and then even quadruples it, and you can go as far as you want out like this. And when you release, it doesn't actually do anything yet, but you're now saying this is the area I want to paste to. So I can then go into here, and I could then say confirm paste, and it would drop that in. Or I could, and there's a few other things as well, so I could nudge it around a little bit if I wanted to. I could repeat it as I'm doing. I can mirror. Oh, because there is a mirror option in here as well, so that's really good. I don't see a rotate, but it's probably in there somewhere, and I just haven't found it yet. If I now go into the control panel, this gives me loads of information. It shows me what is needed to make the thing that I'm trying to place, what hasn't been placed yet. It shows me what I've got in my inventory. It shows me how many of those are already done and placed because they were already there from beforehand, and it shows me how many are in total required. So this blueprint is huge. It requires 2,828 items, most of which is admittedly foundation. But then once I've got all this set up, I can then do things like, you'll see down here there's some red, and that's areas where there's collisions. So I can say I want to remove any terrain that's in the way, and it'll do that. There doesn't seem to be any. But then also any decor, that's things like trees and cactuses and whatnot. I click that, and there you go, it destroys all of those trees that were in the way. Very, very quick and easy. And then I can do a confirm paste. There's a loud noise, and it puts in everything it can. Now I wasn't carrying quite enough solar panels to build the entire thing, but this has now built out everything that I had selected that it could from my inventory, and I can now fly off back to my factory, get some more stuff of whatever's missing, and come out and finish it off. So this is it's a really good system. It is a little bit fiddly. There's a few things that you need to get used to, but it is incredibly powerful, and I think with great power does come a certain amount of fiddliness. So I'm prepared to give them a certain amount of slack there and go, you know what, I'm okay with that. I understand why it's a bit fiddly. But yeah, this has now expanded my solar system out by another couple of rows. I've got plenty of extra batteries, more solar panels. This should work really, really nicely. Having some sort of copy-paste system is, as I say, basically vital for a factory game, because you have a lot of systems where you go, okay, I've got the system working, I've got my distillation tower and a couple of chemical plants to make plastic, but you know what, I need a lot more plastic than that. I'd like to have 4 times as much. And if you then have to go in and place every single one by hand, that's annoying, it's frustrating, it's slow. For that sort of scale of build, it's not the end of the world. But some of my builds have been quite a lot bigger and quite a lot fiddlier to make, or would be quite a lot fiddlier to make. So over here, for example, I've got a copper mine that's feeding an enormous copper smeltery, and this is producing all of the copper that's required by my entire factory. And you can see just how many machines there are in here. And you can imagine that trying to place all of this one at a time would be incredibly frustrating. I think this area was the first time I used the copy-paste system, and it saved it. It saved the game for me, because building up all of this by hand would have been an enormous pain. I think I probably did 1 row by hand to do the numbers, make sure everything was set up in the right place. Then I copied it a second time, mirrored over, and then fiddled the belts to all work properly. Then I copied all of that a second time over here, and then I copied the entire floor a second time on top. And so yes, it is a big construction because I need a lot of copper for my factory. Let's ignore the fact that quite a lot of these smelters aren't actually running at the moment, but I need quite a lot of copper for my factory. So it needs to be a big system, and building all of that up by hand would not have been realistic. It would not have been reasonable. It would have taken forever. Everybody would have left the stream because it would have been really boring, and I'd probably have made mistakes and got things in the wrong place. And yeah, it's just so much better to be able to use a copy-paste functionality, and I am so glad that it is in this game. Every factory game needs some kind of end game goal for you to work towards as you're going through it. Factorio has infinite sciences, so you're encouraged to make science faster and faster to improve your mining productivity, your weapon damage, various other productivities and so on. Something to just keep you going, keep you building the science packs and keep your factory running. Foundry doesn't have infinite research, as far as I'm aware. I haven't seen any of it. But what it does have instead is this system where you produce and sell robots. So along here I've got various different types of robots being made, or at the start, various different types of drones being made. These are, I believe, heavy transport drones, and these are being fed off into a spaceport here. A spaceship will come down like this. It will load up with the drones from this storage system inside the spaceport, and once it's filled up completely, it will then take off. That was impressively good timing, and fly off, and then it'll take those drones up to your space station, where they can then be sold on the intergalactic market. And there are a lot of different types of drones and robots you can make. So I've got, as I mentioned, the heavy transport drones there. Then I've got are these light bots? I think these might be light bots being produced over here and passed through. And then we've got, that's construction material, which is slightly different, but it's still needed up in space. Then we've got these might be vacuum drones or aqua drones or something like that. And then screen bots, and I don't even know what these are. Then gardening robots, and so on. So there's lots and lots of different recipes, and that gives you an incentive to build more and more and more machines out here to make more and more and more of the types of robot. And each type of robot has its own recipe. So this maintenance drone takes thermalite sheets, advanced machinery parts, circuit parts, hover engine, energy cell. So these are things you need to make all of these. You need to make all of these parts before you can make the drones. And so that means you build up a factory where you're building all of the sub parts, and then there's a lot of overlap between them. So the planter drone also takes thermalite sheets, and this one takes basic machinery parts and electronic components, but also then takes hover engines. The transport bots is just iron, machinery parts, and electronic components. That's an easy one. That's the first one you make, and so on. There's lots and lots of different types of bots across here. They've all got slightly different recipes, and you can make them, and then you feed each one into its own spaceport and take them off into space to be sold up there. And so as we look along here, you'll see I've got various different things. So along here, I think we're making vacuum bots there, but here we're making advanced machinery parts, and these are all being fed out onto a bus. And initially, I started trying to do a vertical bus until I realised that was problematic and didn't work very well. And so later on down here, I've sort of squashed all of that down into now it's more or less a horizontal bus. There's a little bit of funny business going on over here where I started trying to make a second row because the ground level one filled up completely and went all the way over to here, and I decided that was quite wide enough, thank you very much. And so I've started a second one coming along here. But this means I can have all of my ingredients running along here, and then we can put in a splitter and then a ramp to bring them up a level, and then they can be brought over and then sent straight into the construction over here. And this works very, very nicely. I'm pleased with this layout. This layout over here is an absolute spaghetti nightmare, which I'm not so pleased with. But the layout I come up with over here with the proper wide bus system works very, very nicely. And with the machines being a level up or from the main bus or a level down from the second row of the bus, it means that I've got plenty of room to then run these belts through the middle of it in order to feed finished robots off to the spaceports, or in order to bring the ingredients over from the bus lanes over into the machines themselves. Now there are a few places where there's a little bit of squish going on, which is why I've got a loop back going on with the belt here. But mostly it's worked really quite nicely and is very, very neat. I do need to make sure I get things in the right order. So for example, I couldn't have put these two the other way round because that would have meant that the belt coming across from this lane would have got in the way of the riser coming up from this one. So you do need to be a little bit careful, but that's not too much of a problem, and it should be well within my capabilities, plastic over there notwithstanding. After the basic drones, you then move on to trying to make the more impressive robots. And for example, so far I've made the farmer robot, but you have to make these in 4 parts. You make the torso, you make the head, you make the arms, and you make the legs. So head, shoulders, knees and toes, almost. Head, shoulders, elbows and toes, I guess. And I've got machines set up along here to make those. So I've got one making the head, one making the torso, 2 making the arms, 2 making the legs, because that seemed like an appropriate balance. It was a bit tricky to squeeze in all of the inputs here, and I've not left any room for expansion, which is a bit of a fail, but never mind, the system does basically work. And then after that, you then build another one of the mega buildings in the game, which is this assembly line. And these are made out of components. So we have an assembly line start, that's this building here, and you feed in the torsos into that, and the torsos then come out on the assembly line conveyor belt. Then you put in your next building and you feed arms into that, or you feed legs in, and they get put onto the robot like that. Then it gets passed on to the next machine, which puts the other arm on like that. The robot carries on to the next machine, which, nope, it doesn't put the legs on. That one welds an arm into place. Then you've got the next machine, which welds the other arm into place. Then you put the legs on. Once you've got both the legs on, you then weld the legs into place. And finally, the very last machine will paint your robot to give it a little bit of customization and, I suppose, protect it from rust. Like this. Psht. There we go. And I decided green for a farmer bot with a blue head because it's one of mine and I make everything blue. That's my sort of corporate colour, as it were. And then once again, like everything else, those then get fed into a special landing pad, and then they get taken away by a spaceship and flown up to the space station, which I can't see. There it is. You can just about see it poking through the clouds over there. So the thing is similar to all of the other assembly systems in that you're making subcomponents and then putting them together in one thing. But instead of just being yet another row of assembly machines, this one is a little bit more interesting because you have this assembly line system going on, it's different and therefore interesting, and I quite like that. The space station then comes with a system that allows you to monitor what's going on there and control it and make sure it's doing everything that it's supposed to. And this allows us to do various things like upgrade various different robot types. So looking through here, you get an alert like this telling you you that this robot is type, or this drone type is ready for an upgrade. You can go in here, so you can make it lighter, which means you can fit more of them on a cargo ship, which is nice, so I tend to go for that one first. Then you can improve the quality, which means they sell for more money, and then you can also improve the production efficiency, which means that you don't use quite as much of a resource in order to make the thing. And it's up to you to choose which way you think is going to be a good way to improve things based on how you're making stuff. And I reckon that bringing this up to about a level 10 and then starting to improve this one is a good balance between of the efficiency between the two of them. You can also see what you've got stored on this on your space station. So you make various things. We've got fuel canister, and apparently we're using up fuel faster than we're making it. So that might be a thing I need to look into next time. You can bring up construction material, which you can then use to build more of your spaceship. And that also apparently is a limiting factor at the moment. So we've run out of that, so I'm going to need to look at that as well. But that's flown up from the ground by spaceship, or you can buy it from other planets around the universe. But I prefer to build these things myself rather than spending money on things. So I need to get more of that being shipped up, because that's limiting how quickly we can do this repair job up here on the space station. You can also have resources stored up here, so there is a system for buying resources from other planets, but that kind of goes against the way I like to play this sort of game. So I haven't done any of that yet. With the exception of the thermalite, which can only be got by selling things, and that's the money in this game. The money is a resource which you can then flatten into and make into robots, which is slightly weird, but maybe it's no different from using gold as a currency. Yes. And then finally you have the products that you're making and then trying to sell. And you can see along here that I've got various different types of robots. We've got quite a lot of different types here, and we've got certain amounts of them being stored. You have two ways of selling. You can either sell on the open market, which means you don't get as much money for it, but there tends to be a much larger market available, and you can control the price, and if you lower the price then you sell more of them and so on. Alternatively, you can go over to the galaxy map and you can set up trading links with other planets, and each trading link requires its own spaceship. So if we had to take a look at Ororox as an example of a planet, this planet requires heavy-duty transport bots, aquatic calling bots, and normal transport bots, and they require 144 of those, 192 of those, 288 of those per hour. I can then supply those with as many as I want, as many as I can, and I've got those. We're trying to sell maximum amounts of the two that we're actually making, and it'll show here the price that we're going to get for them, and that is going to be significantly higher than if we just sold them on the open market. However, as I said, you need to have a spaceship available to fly them out there. If I look at Salaxian, because it's a different planet, you'll see there's different bots required over here, and this time I am trying to sell them all, and so we've got the demand for each of those different types of bots. And the idea is you can expand out and out and out and out and out and try and keep each different planet satisfied. So if I looked at Goooooooals, for example, over here, that wants miner robots, which I'm not building. It wants maintenance drones, which I am. Cleaning bots, I don't think I'm making those. Mining drones, I am. Personal assistant robots, no. Science, no. So I could, for example, if I wanted to, I could unlock this sector, and you can see there's a limited number there, but you can buy more of those by upgrading your space station. Then I can buy a license to go to this planet, which costs an amount of money, and also you have a limit on those, which again you can expand by upgrading your station, so I can do that. And then I can open the supply route configuration. I can say I want to add a ship to it, and I've got some ships at the moment, so ship number 41 can be assigned to that planet. And you can then say that, well, I want to send cleaning bots, maintenance drones, mining drones. But I'm not making miner robots, so I can't do that one. So I can then save that, and then spaceship number 41 will start flying out over there and delivering all these parts that we're asking it to do. And it's only about half full. We're using 47,000 kilos per hour out of its 96,000 kilos per hour capacity. So there's loads of headroom available there. I don't need to upgrade to a bigger ship. This one's going to be absolutely fine. And then we can push out further and further and expand my empire across as much of the galaxy as we have the capability to do so. I think you're supposed to be able to search for different types of planets using these filters up here. It shows and hides the symbols under the planets rather than highlighting the planets. So Velquium requires appliances, agricultural and logistics. Molyneux requires appliances and logistics. And Vorados requires logistics. So that these symbols tell you what the planets require. There are also additional symbols next to them. I think that might be which company has market dominance of that planet, and everyone has their own symbol. So looking at this one, I think this symbol means me, because I am the market leader for this area, and I have 92% of the market share for this planet. But if I go over and look at one that has a different symbol by it, this one, Zeranor, has the market leader is Neo Composites, and presumably that dolphin is their symbol. Right, okay, I've been trying to work out what those symbols meant for a while, and now I have. So that'll be Neo Composites symbol, but I've got 45% of the market share here. If I could go in and start selling them the science assistant drones they want as well, then perhaps that could bump me up, and eventually I get to 100% market share, and then whoop-de-doo, I would functionally, I won't say I'll own that planet, but I will be responsible for transporting most of the stuff they want in there. There's also lots of other information available in the space station, telling you things like how many bots you're selling over what amount of time, sort of galactically and through the sales platform, and so on, how many you've got stored on the station, so you can tell if you're running out and that sort of thing, how many you're making, and it's got information for every single bot. And I should probably at some point between streams go through all of these and make sure everything looks fairly happy. We've also got lots and lots of numbers and charts and all kinds of exciting stuff for anyone who's interested in charts, which I have to admit is me, but I try not to talk about these too much on stream because it'll get a little bit dry. One thing I have noticed with them all is that the today bar is always very, very low, because it shows today as its own thing, which will gradually grow up during the day until it gets to the end of it, like that, which is a bit weird and makes it look like everything has crashed in the last day, which is a bit strange, but never mind. You can also find information on our competitors, and I am right down at the bottom down here, which is slightly depressing, but you've seen the size of the galaxy. I guess I have a lot of work to do there. And you start off the game with a massive debt, but I've been able to pay all of that off through sheer amounts of thermalite production. Having an economy like this in a factory game is interesting and different, but it definitely still needs a little bit of balancing because my money is basically just going through the roof. It has never been any particular problem at any point in the game. As you can see, I've got almost 13 million thermalite at the moment. You saw earlier when I was messing around on the galaxy map, buying the rights to go to another planet, which is one of the few things I spend money on at the moment, costs about 4,000, which is peanuts. It's absolutely nothing when you've got 13 million. Back on the space station, you can also buy spaceships, and they cost 3,000 to 150,000. Again, these are very, very small amounts of money for the amount of income I've got coming in. So I think there's some balancing work is going to be required in order to get the economy to actually make any sense whatsoever, I'm afraid. That said, you could argue that maybe money is not supposed to be a problem, because the challenge of expanding across the galaxy map is upgrading your space station enough to be able to have enough spaceships, and then more importantly, making the drones and the robots fast enough to satisfy all of the planets you're trying to go out to. And so that's more of the challenge than actually having enough money. But then at that point, what's the point in having the money as a thing? Why not just make it? Why bother at all? Why not just have it as another resource or something like that? I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly how to feel about that. I do feel that it's a bit pointless as it is, but then it does also give you a number to look at and say, yes, I've made 13 million. Clearly things are going quite well. It does kind of make the whole space trading system feel quite remote from the rest of the game. The user interface feels so completely different. And sort of the gameplay stuff up here feels very, very different as well. It's almost like this is a completely separate game, and you've just got a purchasing system running from your planet over here. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it feels very, very remote and very separate, even though you are supplying the stuff from your factory on the ground to provide here for you to sell onwards. But it does provide the resource sink that I was talking about earlier, something to force you to make your factory bigger and bigger and keep it growing, keep it supplying, and keep it producing everything you need. One of the things I would quite like to see, and maybe this is on the cards for a future upgrade, is a system that uses the robots you build somewhere on your own planet. So, for example, let me just find somewhere to land while I think about this. If we have a look at the different types of robot available, maybe the maintenance drones could fly out and fix things on your machines when they decay over time, something like that maybe, I don't know. Planter drones would allow you to plant out forests if you had some sort of organic resources requirements in the system. Transport bots would, I guess, move things around instead of belts, I'm not sure. That's a slightly more difficult one. I can't think of a use for a snack bot or a screen bot. Mining drones, perhaps you should start off with some sort of fixed building that just has a mining laser mounted on the front of it that can dig out in a certain relatively small area. And once you start building the mining drones, that you could then unlock the drone miner, and that requires a number of these mining drones to be fed into it to allow you to start making the drone miners, and then they're a bit more powerful. They could run faster, they could cover a larger area, that sort of thing. Combat drones would, I guess, obviously be useful if you had some sort of combat system in the game. I can't say I'm keen on the idea of adding in combat. It does tend to be my least favourite part of factory games, but they do tend to all get it eventually. A light bot you could have them flying around lighting up your factory at night. Heavy duty transport bots, well, they'd be similar to the transport bots, but for carrying more stuff, I don't know. Vacuum, I don't. But you get the general idea. And then farmer bots could be an upgraded version of the planter drones that allow you to farm larger areas or grow more things. And combat robots would be a more effective version of the combat drone. And miner robots would allow you to perhaps then go in and dig up huge areas like your construction machines do, but they'd allow you to do it underground, or you could dig out things like that. There are possibilities for all these drone types, and I think it'd be quite nice to introduce actual uses for them other than just selling the things. Also, those rocks out there are bothering me. Let's get rid of them, because they're just floating in the air the way a brick doesn't, should we say. There we go, that's much tidier. One other thing you can do with the space station is buy and sell on the Galactic market. So you need to buy rights to buy and sell certain resources. But from this, you can, well, at the moment, we can only buy and sell construction material, because that's the only one I've got the license for. But through station upgrades and the market office, yes, here we go, I can buy the rights to buy and sell electronic components. So let's stick that in the queue, and we'll do machinery parts as well, because why not? Okay, that's going to take a little while. It's going to burn through a little bit of my money, but then even the more expensive ones, they only cost 200,000 Thermalite bars to buy the upgrade, so they're not particularly difficult. But anyway, buying these things would then allow me to go into the Galactic market and then buy and sell them. And from there, I could then drop them down to the ground and provide them to my factory. So I could essentially get somebody else to make my electronic components or my mechanical components, and then I could provide them to the factory to build my robots and sell them. Or I could do it the other way around, and I could build electronic components, ship them up here and sell them on. But this feels a bit weird and against the way I like to play these sort of games. I would much rather have a large factory like this, building all of those bits and pieces that I need, and then sending them along on buses and feeding them into the machines to make the robots. I'd rather be self-sufficient than have spaceships bringing in all the resources I need. The one exception to that is Thermalite, because there is no way to get Thermalite apart from by selling stuff. And so I have a large landing pad here. This is the only place where I've started using medium ships so far, because I just need so much Thermalite, and that's bringing down the bars of Thermalite, which can then be taken off, and they can go down underground to be squashed into the plates, which can then go off into the rest of the factory. Fine, but at the moment, yes, I am bringing Thermalite down to supply the factory, but that's the only thing that's being brought in like this. Everything else is being mined and then refined and built up on planet, and I much prefer doing things that way. And that now covers basically everything I had to say about Foundry from my sort of 50 or 60 hours of playing so far. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying the game. I think at the moment it is my second favourite factory game behind Factorio. I'd say it's much better than Satisfactory, much less frustrating, and I'm enjoying it more than I enjoyed Dyson Sphere Program as well. Not to say either of those are bad games, just that I think this is the second best in the list. So if you're a Factorio veteran and you fancy something a little bit different, I strongly recommend it. If you're a Foundry veteran and you fancy something a little bit different, then Factorio is the obvious one to check out. They're both very, very good, and I'm looking forward to playing a lot more of them over the weeks to come. So please come along to the streams. We are playing Factorio Planetary Pioneers every Monday. That's at 7:30 PM UK time. We've got 5 players, 20 planets, 30 science packs, and we're sort of scratching the surface of it so far. We've got about 5 planets in. Foundry I'm streaming on Wednesdays. I'm doing that one solo, but I've managed to build up a decent amount of stuff myself, so I think things are going quite well. So yeah, please come along and join that stream as well. That's from 8 PM UK time. And there are videos coming out every Thursday and Friday on the channel that are mostly going to be about Foundry or Factorio at the moment, but there'll be some car and woodworking ones at other times coming out as well. And here's my medium ship, just coming down to unload some more Thermalite for me. I think that's basically everything I have to cover, so please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on anything, and follow on Twitch as well if you'd prefer to keep up with the streams on that platform. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.